She built his empire. He destroyed her soul. Now Vanessa Alden is back, not to beg for justice, but to burn everything he ever touched. The hotel courtyard was quiet, tucked between towering walls of glass and ivy. Vanessa let the silence wash over her, a stark contrast to the conference's morning buzz. She had just found a spot on a wooden bench near the koi pond when Patricia appeared, gliding over the stone pathway like someone who had timed her entrance deliberately. "You've always had excellent timing for escapes," Patricia remarked, smoothing her skirt as she sat down uninvited. Vanessa offered a soft smile. "I prefer to call it recognizing when I need space." Patricia studied her with narrowed eyes, not unkind, but perceptive. "You've changed." "I've reverted," Vanessa said, "to the person I was before I started trying to fit into spaces that weren't designed for me." Patricia sighed, the kind of sigh that carried the weight of unsaid history. "Families are complicated, Vanessa, especially established ones like ours. There are expectations, traditions, ways things have always been done. I'm aware. I spent 7 years observing those traditions, 7 years trying to meet those expectations. Perhaps we weren't always as welcoming as we could have been," Patricia conceded. It was the closest thing to an apology Vanessa had ever heard from her. But disappearing without a word was rather dramatic, don't you think? "I left a detailed letter for Gregory. I ensured all financial obligations were properly handled. I made a clear adult decision to remove myself from a situation that had become harmful to my well-being. There was nothing dramatic about it." Patricia's lips pursed. "Gregory was devastated." "Gregory was inconvenienced," Vanessa corrected gently. "There's a difference." The carefully composed expression on Patricia's face cracked just slightly. "You have no idea what this past year has been like for him, for all of us. You're right, just as you have no idea what the previous 7 years were like for me." They sat in tense silence for a moment. Then Vanessa continued, "But I'm not interested in exchanging pain metrics, Patricia. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because I'm good at what I do, and my work has value to Sheffield's campaign." Patricia tilted her head. Not quite respect, but perhaps a new awareness shimmered in her eyes. "You always were stubborn." "Determined," Vanessa countered with a small smile. Another distinction worth noting. They walked back toward the conference center together. At the doors, Patricia asked, "Will you be at the closing dinner tonight?" "Yes, Westwood has a table. The salmon is usually excellent." It was such a mundane observation, like something a mother-in-law might say to a daughter-in-law during a holiday dinner. The normalcy of it disoriented Vanessa. She murmured her agreement and moved back to the workshop. The afternoon sessions were technical and strategic: implementation models, market penetration forecasts, and digital engagement metrics. Vanessa contributed actively but kept a professional distance, neither seeking nor avoiding the Caldwells. As the final session ended and people began packing laptops and exchanging business cards, Gregory approached. He looked older than she, remembered. Softer around the eyes, a little wearier, but familiar in a way that stirred something deep. "Still up for coffee?" he asked. "Yes," she said. They walked together in silence to the coffee shop in the lobby. Once seated, they didn't need to ask about each other's drinks. His Americano, her latte. It was muscle memory, familiar. "Seattle suits you," Gregory said. "It does. The creative community has been welcoming." "I've been in therapy." "Since you left," he said, catching her off guard. "Dad thought it was unnecessary, but it's been helpful." Vanessa blinked. Gregory had always dismissed therapy as paying someone to validate your feelings. "I'm glad," she said. "My therapist helped me understand some things about our marriage, about my family, about how I failed to see what was happening to you because it was easier not to." She looked at him. For the first time in years, she saw the man she had fallen in love with, the man who once held her hand under the table during Caldwell family dinners. "Thank you for saying that." "I didn't stand up for you," he said. "Not against Amanda, not against Mom, not even against myself. No, you didn't. I keep thinking about that barbecue, about Amanda's joke, how everyone laughed, how I laughed. He swallowed hard. I keep thinking about what you said. Challenge accepted. I didn't understand what you meant. But now I realize you were declaring independence. From all of us. They talked for nearly an hour, longer than she had planned. Gregory explained how the family dynamic had shifted in her absence. Amanda's criticisms had expanded to target his new girlfriend. Patricia's control over family events had intensified. Richard had been disappointed when Gregory declined a promotion that would have uprooted him. I'm seeing everything differently, he said. Like someone adjusted the contrast on a photo I've been staring at my whole life. As they stood to leave, he finally asked, Is there any chance for us? Not right away. But eventually? Vanessa looked at him. The man who had once been her entire future. She felt affection, even a faint whisper of attraction. But the tether was gone. I think we both needed to become different people, she said. And I like who I'm becoming now. He nodded. You were always stronger than I gave you credit for. We both were, she replied. You just needed different circumstances to discover it. They parted with a platonic hug. For the first time, it felt like real closure. Back in the conference room, Vanessa gathered her portfolio. She was almost out the door when Amanda appeared. I need to ask you something, Amanda said, and I'd appreciate an honest answer. All right. Did you take this project knowing it was connected to our family? No, Vanessa said truthfully. I discovered the Sheffield-Caldwell connection after accepting Westwood's offer. And you didn't think to recuse yourself? Why would I? I'm extremely good at what I do. This project needed someone with exactly my skill set. The fact that your family might benefit is incidental. So it's just a coincidence that you reappeared 1 year after disappearing? Vanessa smiled. Life rarely arranges itself with such perfect symmetry, but yes, essentially. I don't believe in coincidences that convenient. What would be the alternative explanation? That I orchestrated a year-long plan to build a new career, forge new connections, all to land this one project and re-enter your family's orbit? That gives you far more space in my thoughts than you've occupied. Amanda blinked. She didn't respond right away. At the barbecue, she said eventually. When I made that joke, I didn't think you'd actually leave. It wasn't just a joke, Vanessa replied. It was an articulation of something you'd been saying all along, that I didn't belong, that I was dispensable. And you weren't wrong. In your context, I was those things. But I've since found contexts where I'm not. Amanda's composure cracked, revealing something rare. Uncertainty. Gregory hasn't been the same. Gregory is finding his way, Vanessa said. As am I. Amanda hesitated. And there's no chance of reconciliation? We've reconciled in the only way that matters. We acknowledged the truth of our marriage and found peace with its ending. Amanda nodded slowly. Then, almost reluctantly, your presentation yesterday. It was genuinely good work. I would have said so regardless of who you were. Coming from Amanda, that meant something. Thank you, Vanessa said simply. As she stepped outside, heading toward her room to prepare for the final dinner, a strange lightness settled over her. She had faced each Caldwell, Gregory, Patricia, Amanda, not as a broken former family member, but as a whole, competent individual. The Caldwells no longer loomed large. They were simply people, flawed, complex, and no longer central. The next morning arrived like the calm before a storm. Vanessa stood before the mirror in her apartment, adjusting her blazer. The woman staring back wasn't the same Vanessa who had been publicly humiliated just a day ago. Vanessa had fire in her eyes and strategy in her veins. She was ready for, or she had spent the entire night reviewing company files, emails, and financial statements, piecing together the jigsaw puzzle of Morgan's treachery. One thing was becoming increasingly clear. Morgan had meticulously orchestrated her downfall. But Vanessa wasn't just going to prove her innocence. She was going to bring him to his knees. Her first stop was the company's satellite office, where her closest ally, Lisa Trent, still worked. Lisa was a seasoned marketing strategist, and someone Vanessa had mentored. She greeted Vanessa with a concerned look. Vanessa, are you okay? I saw the video. It's all over the company intranet. That's exactly why I need your help, Vanessa replied. I'm going to prove Morgan set me up, and I need someone I can trust. Lisa hesitated only for a second before nodding. Whatever you need. Together, they began digging into internal records, searching for discrepancies in budgets, contracts, and correspondence. Vanessa suspected Morgan had created a shell company to funnel funds from client budgets. The missing piece was proof. At a nearby cafe later that week, Vanessa met with an unlikely source, Dominic Sayer, a former compliance officer who had been pushed out of the company months ago. I always knew Morgan was trouble, Dominic said. He started making deals behind closed doors, funneling contracts through a dummy vendor. He even paid me off to keep quiet. Vanessa leaned forward. Can you prove it? Dominic nodded. I kept everything. Emails, payment trails, even the dummy vendor's registration papers. I didn't think anyone would have the guts to take him on. Vanessa's heart raced. This was her smoking gun. She spent the next few days compiling the evidence with Lisa's help. They uncovered an intricate scheme involving a fake consultancy firm, one registered under Morgan's cousin's name. Millions had been siphoned, and Vanessa's project had been the final scapegoat to cover it all up. Meanwhile, social media buzzed with speculation. Vanessa was still trending, and while many had mocked her, a growing wave of support began to swell. Hashtags like Justice for Vanessa and corporate betrayal surfaced as anonymous insiders began leaking small but supportive claims. A week later, armed with a meticulously documented case, Vanessa requested an emergency board meeting. The boardroom was tense. Morgan sat smugly at the end of the table, flanked by a few loyal executives. Vanessa stood tall, placing a thick folder on the table. Before I begin, I want to thank you all for your time. I've come here today not as a disgraced executive, but as a whistleblower. What I'm about to show you will explain everything and more. With Lisa and Dominic backing her, Vanessa laid out her case with surgical precision. She showed the emails, the financial trails, and the corporate filings. Every document pointed squarely at Morgan. Morgan's face paled as Vanessa clicked through a final slide that showed a timeline of the fraud. The room erupted into whispers. This is preposterous, Morgan snapped. She's making this up. Dominic stepped forward. Then explain why your cousin's name appears as the sole beneficiary of the dummy corporation's accounts. The board members demanded silence. The chairman, Alan Grant, turned to Morgan. You're being suspended immediately pending investigation. Morgan stood up, furious. You're all making a mistake. But Vanessa had won the first major battle. As Morgan stormed out, Vanessa felt a surge of vindication, but also a deeper sense of purpose. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reform. After Morgan's suspension, the board initiated a full internal audit. Vanessa was offered a temporary advisory role to help restructure operations and ensure transparency. During the transition, Vanessa learned just how deeply Morgan's manipulation had infected the company culture. Middle managers were terrified to speak up, and creative staff had been silenced under layers of bureaucracy. She organized open forums, reinstated the idea pitches, and brought back teams that had been marginalized. As weeks passed, employee morale began to improve. Vanessa's return was no longer a scandal. It was a symbol of resilience. Media outlets began covering the turnaround story, and Vanessa was featured in business podcasts, telling her side with honesty and clarity. She never painted herself as a victim, but as someone who refused to let corruption define her legacy. Just as things seemed to stabilize, Vanessa received an anonymous message. He's not done. Morgan, it turned out, had been quietly transferring money into offshore accounts before his suspension. Worse, he had planted false documents that could implicate Lisa in the fraud. Vanessa acted swiftly. She hired a private digital forensics expert to investigate Morgan's online footprint. The team uncovered encrypted emails and a hidden server with damning evidence. She brought this new evidence to the board just as Morgan attempted a final smear campaign through a leaked interview. But this time, the truth was too strong, and his narrative collapsed under the weight of facts. Lisa was cleared, and Morgan was formally terminated. Criminal charges followed. 3 months later, Vanessa stood at the front of a fully packed auditorium. The company had just launched its new initiative, the Vanguard Project, a mentorship and transparency program designed to support innovative leaders and whistleblowers. Vanessa had been reinstated permanently as Chief Strategy Officer. Lisa was promoted to Director of Communications, and Dominic was brought back as Head of Compliance. "We rose not because we were never knocked down," Vanessa told the crowd, "but because we refused to stay down. Our strength lies in our integrity." The applause was thunderous. As she walked off stage, Vanessa felt something she hadn't in a long time: peace. She had turned humiliation into revolution and betrayal into opportunity, but more importantly, she had reclaimed her name. Vanessa stood at the threshold of her office, breathing in the scent of fresh paper, coffee, and a hint of lavender from the diffuser she'd placed near her desk. The storm had passed, but the ruins it left behind were still being rebuilt. It had been 6 months since the boardroom explosion that unseated Richard Ashcroft and elevated Vanessa to interim CEO of Viridian Tech. Her name was no longer whispered in contempt, but spoken with respect. Yet respect came at a cost, and the price Vanessa paid had been steep. Her father's silence lingered like a ghost. Even after the dust settled and her name was cleared, Daniel Hunt had refused to meet with her. The board's investigation confirmed her innocence and revealed that her father had, under Richard's manipulation, funneled critical company data to rivals and altered internal reports to discredit her. When confronted with evidence, Daniel resigned and vanished from public life. But Vanessa didn't want revenge. She wanted closure. A resolution that would allow her to look forward instead of constantly glancing over her shoulder. Her new role offered her purpose, but the wounds still ached. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from the moment. It was Clara. "The press conference is in 30 minutes. Are you ready to unveil Viridian's Phoenix project?" Vanessa smiled. More than ready. The Phoenix project had been her vision since her earliest days at Viridian, a sustainable AI framework designed to monitor and mitigate environmental impact in industrial operations. The idea was ahead of its time, and was shelved by Richard 3 years ago. Now, with her in charge, it was resurrected. Its symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The auditorium pulsed with anticipation. Tech journalists, environmental advocates, investors, and employees packed the hall. Vanessa walked on stage. To thunderous applause, the lights warm against her skin. As she took her place behind the podium, a slideshow began behind her, showcasing the evolution of the Phoenix project. Her speech was deliberate, confident, and personal. "This isn't just a product launch. It's a promise that technology and integrity can coexist, that companies can grow without destroying the very world we live in, and that we rise, not despite our scars, but because of them." She ended with a short nod, not needing to soak in the applause that followed. The mission was greater than ego. After the conference, she retreated to her office. Clara joined her, eyes sparkling. "You crushed it. The tweets are flying in. Everyone's talking about how this could change industrial standards. Even Bloomberg called it the smartest pivot in green tech in a decade." Vanessa exhaled. "Good. Let's keep the momentum." Clara hesitated. "There's one more thing. Your father..." "He's here, in the lobby." Vanessa froze. For a second, she felt 17 again. Seeking his approval, fearing his judgment. She set down her glass and stood. "Send him in." Daniel Hunt looked older, grayer, thinner, diminished, but his presence still carried weight. He stepped inside slowly, uncertain. "Vanessa, you look like your mother did when she made partner." She nodded, motioning to a seat. He sat. The silence between them stretched. "You have every right to hate me," he said finally. "I don't hate you. I just don't understand how you could let Richard manipulate you so easily." He looked down, ashamed. "I saw you rising, faster than I ever did, more respected. I felt like I was becoming irrelevant. Richard offered me relevance in exchange for, well, betrayal. I justified it saying I was protecting the company, but I was just protecting my ego." Vanessa absorbed his words, the pain still fresh but no longer blinding. "What do you want, Dad?" "To say I'm sorry, and to ask if there's a way back. Not to Viridian, to you." She studied him. This was the man who had taught her strategy on chessboards, how to ride a bike, and how to read profit statements before she was 13. This was also the man who had doubted her, betrayed her. Forgiveness isn't a switch, Dad, but maybe we can try. Tears welled in his eyes. He nodded. Months passed. The Phoenix Project attracted global attention. Major manufacturers signed on to implement it. Vanessa was no longer interim CEO. She was officially appointed, and under her leadership, Viridian's stock doubled. But what truly marked her legacy wasn't the tech or the title. It was the culture she rebuilt. She instituted ethics training, launched a mentorship program for women in tech, and created a whistleblower protection system with real bite. At the company's annual retreat, Vanessa stood by the lakeside bonfire. Watching employees laugh and talk, Clara handed her a drink. "You did it, V. Not just the product, the position. You changed the place." Vanessa looked up at the stars. It's not just about change. It's about making sure no one else has to claw their way through betrayal just to be seen. Clara smiled. "So, what's next for Viridian's Phoenix?" Vanessa chuckled. "We fly." And as the fire crackled, reflected in the calm lake, Vanessa felt something she hadn't in years: peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of purpose. She had been broken, betrayed, and underestimated, and she had risen, again and again, like a phoenix.